Hello, welcome into the utter chaos that will be this podcast. As we take a look at the college football rankings here in Week 10, as we enter this week. On Tuesday night, the College Football Playoff Committee rankings will come out for the first time, and it's going to be one fun time for sure. Zach Gilleland, sports reporter for the Flyer, back with me along with news editor Chase Gorski. I'm Chris Mackowiak, sports editor of the Flyer. And right here, we're just going to have some fun and talk through college football. Have no outline for this podcast. Just going to go where we want, when we want. But first thing I'd like to get out of the way for everyone out there, the biases of this group. Chase Gorski, Penn State, still in a depression, looking for answers after a 1-point loss to Ohio State, despite that catch for a touchdown being a catch. My bias, Georgia, my entire life. My aunt and uncle went to Georgia, and I grew up a college football fan with them. So I'm liking the season so far. Kirby Smart is a god. So that's all I'll say. They're number 2 in the rankings. Over here for Zach, Chase and I would like to play some taps for him because he's a Maryland fan. But he's a fan of multiple other things. What are those, Zach?
Well, it has to be my Maryland Terrapins. Also, Pittsburgh, TCU, New Mexico State. I have a bias against Oregon State, Florida State, Alabama, now Georgia. I used to like Georgia now, but because of you, I do not like Georgia anymore. Who else do I not like? Ohio State, can't stand them. Don't like Notre Dame. Maybe West Virginia, I don't like. And Hawaii, who do they think they are?
The Rainbow Warriors.
7-hour time difference. Oh, look at us. We get to have 14 games. Who do they think they are?
Who do you think you
Sorry,
are? Okay.
I like the Rainbow.
So essentially,
I'm gonna put one of your favorites at the top of my do not like list.
Fresno State?
I'm gonna put Pitt right up there at the top.
So essentially, the only teams Zach likes are Maryland, Pitt, Toledo, and UTSA. So we'll go with that at the end of the day. So first off, let's look at the AP rankings coming out today and get our initial thoughts on those. Alabama 1, Georgia 2, as expected. Georgia actually with 2 first-place votes. Just noticed that today. So looking good, Chase. Looking good. Ohio State 3, Wisconsin 4, Notre Dame 5, Clemson 6, Penn State 7. Oklahoma 8, Miami 9, TCU 10, and I'll just stay with the top 10 there. If anyone wants to bring up anything about the other teams, go ahead. But I agree with it overall. Wisconsin, I would put Notre Dame 4 over Wisconsin. Wisconsin, obviously, I think we can all agree, hasn't played anything. Alabama, at the end of the day, hasn't played anything because Florida State. All you can really say about Florida State, they lost 35-3 against Boston College. Like, come on.
I thought that Maryland was the only team in NCAA football that can make Boston College look really good, especially after the, I don't remember, the Little Sisters of the Poor Bowl and the Quick Lane Bowl, that's what it was. And they gave up 36 points to Boston College, who couldn't score 20 in a season. And then Florida State literally poops themselves against Boston College. It doesn't make sense. What is with this world?
That's the only way you can sum it up. You look at them. Who would have? If you find me someone who had Louisville and Florida State at the bottom of the ACC right now, no way.
It's Wake Forest's year.
It's that one guy that had the 15 seed Florida Gulf Coast in the Sweet 16 or something, at the end of the day.
The guy I want to play poker with.
Yeah. But Notre Dame, obviously, if you're on social media, they're the hot pick right now to squeak into the top 4. But come on. Notre Dame always has a tough strength of schedule. It lowers there with the ACC kind of down other than Clemson out there. Miami, obviously, we talked about this earlier, guys. They remind us of Florida State from a few years ago. They're winning close, but they're undefeated, so there's not much value in that ranking. But Notre Dame, they're not talking about it, but their one loss is a 20-19 loss against Georgia in South Bend.
They did defeat Miami, Ohio, and put 52 points on them. The Redhawks power program in the MAC. You never know. A tough win. Temple. I mean, that's a quality win.
Okay.
There's so many things. There's so many things to try and assess with all this. You look at. I really easily see comparisons between this year's Notre Dame and last year's USC. Only difference being last year's USC had 2 losses. It was a little easier to kind of ignore them, but they were the hot hand. And you see Notre Dame coming in, 1 loss, obviously the hot hand. But here's why I'm not so worried, and I'll try to avoid my bias. As
North Carolina.
Well, Chase, you already accepted your bias. USC,
right,
so
sure.
Continue.
But anyway, so I'm not worried because we saw so many crazy differences last year between the AP and the football playoff rankings.
Yeah.
So at this point, anything can happen. I think we all, the three of us, have a consensus that Wisconsin won't be in the top 4, at least when
Not
there's
yet,
playoff
at least,
rankings.
yeah.
They haven't. I mean, what Wisconsin has to do to stay the 4 seed, and I really don't think they get higher than 4.
No.
But what they have to do is they have to win out and win the Big Ten championship. That's really the only way they stay in.
Because we were even looking at their schedule earlier, Chase. Like, they're going to play Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota. They're all games that we could see them losing. Like, this Wisconsin team, they started the season ranked number 9. They could easily just deflate.
Exactly.
They're not winning that much either.
Yeah.
24-10 over Illinois. I'm not giving you any credit.
Illinois, worst team in the Big Ten. We have that decided now.
Shout out to Lovie Smith.
They've claimed that over Rutgers. They've claimed the worst Big Ten team
Pardon,
title.
you were French.
But yeah, Wisconsin, they've got a long way to go. That was what we said, Chris, was they've got 4 losable games coming up, but they are not 4 resume-making games. They're what Zach likes to call trap games.
So in the Power 5, can we just go and have like a tournament here, the worst possible teams in each? So we'll get Illinois, we'll get Kansas out of the Big 12.
Tennessee.
That Kansas Baylor game will decide which is the worst team in the Big 12. The SEC,
Yeah.
I don't really know who you can put. Maybe Missouri.
It's got to be Missouri and Tennessee.
And then
I
Pac-12.
really just want to put Florida up because of what they did this past week.
the Pac-12 far and beyond Oregon State. So just have those teams, and if you want to put Rutgers in there, you can. So we'll have a 6-win.
Don't forget Illinois.
Of course, Illinois.
Of course, Lovie Smith.
Illinois is our number 1 seed in this one.
But Illinois is new on the scene, though, because you go back to last year, Rutgers, I think, against the Big 4, against Penn State, Michigan State, and Ohio State, I want to say they were outscored about 156-0. So I don't like to forget that one, but Illinois is making it tough on me this year.
You tell me that Oregon State-Kansas matchup in Lawrence, Kansas will not put butts in the seats. That will be a fantastic slugfest
Hey,
of just pure
and it's a
crap.
chance for a win for both teams. It's a chance.
That Baylor-Kansas matchup will decide the pinnacle of the bottom for the Big 12.
It's true.
Okay, let's take a look at the schedule for this upcoming week. See what we could be looking at come next ranking cycle. Because honestly, it's the first week of the college football playoff rankings. We all know everything could change. It was the first ever rankings for it that there were 3 SEC teams, and 2 of those just died, and they were from the Egg Bowl. That's all I'll say. But so looking at the schedule up at this for the rest of this week, some good games out there that we'll have this week. If you were had some free time, you noticed about 8 watchable games at one time at 3:30 and no games at night, which is kind of frustrating. Good job, television networks. I guess you recognize everyone was going to be at Halloween parties that night. But looking at this week, I know what Zach's doing Tuesday and Wednesday nights. Maction about 3 games. So other than his favorite team, Toledo's on Thursday. Navy against Temple.
I'm disappointed because that's an ESPNU game. Northern Illinois and Toledo, the top 2 teams in the MAC West, seemingly the winner of that matchup, will be in pretty much good position, will control their own destiny. And even Wednesday, Central Michigan and Western Michigan in that 3-4 spot in the MAC West. And I was talking to Chase a little bit earlier about this in the MAC East, which is by far the worst division in the MAC. Shout out to Maction. But Ohio...
The worst out of what? There's 2 divisions.
Ohio normally comes out of the MAC East, other than that Bowling Green, because Lord knows Kent State's not going to be good ever.
Shout out to Nick Saban.
Well, of course, alma mater. Slowly, Kent State's putting out some good talent in the MAC quality, but I'd like to see Akron make it. And no, Chase, I know you'd like to see Western Michigan make it as well, but Western Michigan's got those matchups against Northern Illinois and Toledo, but as you're saying, Chris, a lot of good matchups this weekend.
Definitely are. I want to take a second to just address... I just want to specifically look at one conference here because I want to eliminate them from the discussion.
What, the Pac-12?
I wanted to eliminate them last year, but somehow we let Washington in. I don't understand it.
Chase,
but sure, let's just address this right now. The Pac-12 will not make the playoffs. We've got their closest chance is Washington, and it's just not going to happen. So let's look. Next week's schedule, pretty irrelevant. Right now, the hottest team in the Pac-12 looks like it's almost Arizona.
Arizona USC this weekend. Winner will take the Pac-12 South. I'm so excited. Let's go Rich Rod.
Yeah, come on. Rich Rod. I would love if Arizona just took down USC. That'd make my day, too, even though I remember the first couple weeks we were desperately rooting against USC. Well, they kind of did this to themselves. They're done. Okay, as we look through the schedule, noon games, let's go through there first. Penn State, Michigan State, that's a win for Michigan State. Wisconsin against Indiana. Honestly, I have no faith in this Wisconsin team. You guys listening realize that all three of us don't really. Like, I could even see Indiana pulling that out despite their quarterback injuries and all that crap.
I think Wisconsin last year had a lot of potential, just couldn't really solidify it.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm trying to eliminate all that, Penn State came in really hot in the Big Ten championship, and I just don't think Wisconsin could hold them down. But last year was Wisconsin's only chance, in my opinion. I mean, this year they've just been spotty. They really don't, and it's while it's not something you can really blame them for, is how crappy that section of the Big Ten is. I mean, Illinois, Nebraska. I mean. Just some not really great quality teams, so definitely, I don't know if they could lose to Indiana because Indiana struggles, but it's possible.
I hate to say it, but if a Bortenschlager-led Maryland offense can put up 42 on you, then
anything's possible.
Chances are Idaho can probably put up 50 as well. So Wisconsin, with a true freshman running back Jonathan Taylor, they're going to put up points at will, and honestly.
Michigan State went down in 3 overtimes to Northwestern, so I was joking. I give them no shot against Penn State and that offense. Okay, any thoughts on Auburn? Let's just go through that right now. They're at Texas A&M. I'm chalking that in as an Aggie victory after they laid an egg against Mississippi State.
A lot of 2-loss teams in the SEC that I hate to say a lot of things, and I continue to say it. SEC's having a down year, and I honestly think that there are some fluke 2-win teams. They're just going to beat each other up, and there's going to be a lot of 8-4 teams that are for some reason in that Sugar Bowl conversation where they're going to get thrashed by the second-best team in the Big 12.
Well, honestly, other than Georgia, the West teams are beating up on the East teams. Other than Georgia, so the West teams are getting a lot of SEC wins, and they're sticking in there against Alabama.
Missouri, Tennessee.
That's what I'm saying.
Missouri, Tennessee,
That's what I'm saying.
What you have to go up against.
It's not, and that's why Georgia's number 2 in the nation. I'll admit it.
I'm sorry, Kentucky's having a good year, but they've never really had a chance in the SEC.
It's sad when Kentucky and South Carolina are 2-3 in the SEC, and they have 2 losses in conference.
You also look at it, Kentucky's having a good year comparatively to what they usually
comparatively
do. Doesn't always mean everything. I just don't see A&M winning this game.
Auburn,
I highly agree with Zach. I do not think that Auburn should be at number 16.
They're way too high.
I think they're pretty overrated, but I think it's the name that gets them a little bit. But I must say I could see Auburn being able to pull off something later in the season in terms of upsets. So I like to think they'll get on a bit of a roll here, and I don't think they'll lose to A&M.
If you let LSU's offense get a comeback against you, you are not winning the Iron Bowl. You will not win the Iron Bowl.
Okay, 3:30 matchups. Anybody want to take South Carolina in Athens at Georgia and annoy me?
I just want to take a second. You skipped a really important matchup.
Georgia State, Georgia State's Georgia Southern. Is that what you're looking at?
We've got Syracuse at Florida State.
Yeah, Syracuse is going to win.
And we've got Baylor at Kansas.
Even a half hour earlier than that South Carolina-Georgia matchup, UAB is 1 win away.
See what you did, Chase? See what you did.
A bowl game here. They're playing 1-7 Rice, who is not a good team. The only thing they have at that program is baseball. Shout out to Anthony Rendon and Lance Berkman.
Oh.
But UAB, 1 year after coming back, they may get a bowl game. This is a team that actually recruited well. They shut down their program because they like to fund Alabama and Auburn, but UAB 5-3. Let's go Sunbelt. Let's go Conference USA.
Well, yeah, let's go right at the Georgia-South Carolina matchup. I don't think South Carolina has a shot. I think if it was in South Carolina, I wouldn't be surprised of an upset, but I wouldn't expect it. In Georgia, I don't think there's a chance. I hate to, just like Zach says, I hate to say it, but I think Georgia fumbles towards the end of the year, Chris. I know you don't see it. But I'll admit I don't know if they're I don't know if they're ready for the big stage.
They're going to the
You're
plane.
talking about Georgia Tech, right? I'm as high on Georgia Tech as I am.
Okay, Zach. Yeah, they go to the plains and then they face a triple option offense. So I agree with you. There's stumbling blocks there. I agree with you.
There's a lot of 3:30 matchups I'm looking at.
What I'm really excited about is our top underdog of the year in all of NCAA, the top trap game in any conference, is going to Kinnick Stadium in Iowa. And hasn't
Ohio State,
faced
man,
the
Ohio
Hawkeyes.
State.
One time I can agree with you.
Telling you what, look, Iowa hasn't gotten. If I'm correct, this year they haven't really had that upset win. They almost had it.
Against Penn State.
So I think it's due. I think they're due. No, I think that if Ohio State plays the way they played this past weekend, I think it's definitely possible. I think it's hard to. I think it's hard. That's how Iowa's been able to make a living at home, is where these teams with good offenses come in and they're not able to start off, running on all cylinders, and Ohio State won't have their home crowd to back them up. So I think it's definitely possible if they start off the way they've been started.
So at 3:30, Notre Dame's going to whoop on Wake Forest.
Mm-hmm.
Earlier, Chase, you told me NC State back-to-back losses these 2 weeks. They are hosting the Clemson Tigers. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I said they lost this past week. I say they lose this week again. They're out of the rankings. No one talks about them anymore. And I think we're going to see a really interesting conversation of where we are right back to the beginning of this year when the whole debate was who gets in, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Clemson. And I think those three names come back to us once again after this upcoming weekend, because people look at this. It's a ranked win for Clemson. They pile up another one. I really don't think NC State has a shot.
Iowa State at West Virginia. Iowa State, they're really piling forward up to number 14, but they already have 2 losses on the season. Like, people, you can't get behind them now. It's too late.
You can't tell me Iowa State's the 14th best team
It's
in
come
the
on.
country.
They have a
whole
good
Big 12
defense. I'll give them
The
that.
whole Big 12 used to be a bunch of good teams, and then everybody beat up on Iowa State and Kansas. Those were the teams you look forward to. Like, there's some mediocre teams in the Big 12, but the Big 12 was really top-heavy, then all of a sudden Iowa State and Kansas. And now it's taking Iowa State's place is Baylor.
Yeah. All I think it really says about the Big 12 is that they are just beating up on each other. You have Bedlam, so 1-loss teams in Oklahoma State and Oklahoma. Game day's going there. One of them's going to have 2 losses and be done. Like, the Big 12 is just asking for it. TCU was the only chance. They're done now. A loss to Iowa State, a team that won't be in the rankings by the end of the year. They're just done.
I really even think TCU, I could have seen them going pretty far and still getting snubbed like they did a few years ago. But as for the Big 12 specifically, I put Iowa State on a similar level to Iowa. Honestly, I see them, this year they've been able to come away with some great upsets, and it's a great story. They deserve a nice, big name bowl game. But honestly, I see them losing at West Virginia this week. And if the Big 12 wants any shot, I know, Chris, you think they're done. I want to think they're done. I hope they're done.
Well, that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at.
Here's what I think is if the Big 12 wants any shot of getting in, Oklahoma's got to beat Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
If Oklahoma State pulls this off, Big 12's done. I don't think they put Oklahoma State in. I don't think they're strong enough. Looking at them, even if their resume is they beat Oklahoma.
And all the networks are talking about this, guys. They wanted a Big 12 championship so bad, they are going to end up shooting themselves in the foot. Because I could easily see TCU losing in that.
Yeah, well, because Oklahoma State already has that loss to TCU. If Oklahoma wins in Bedlam and then wins out, they'll have that win against West Virginia, TCU, and Oklahoma State with their only loss coming against Iowa State. So that's the Big 12's best option is Iowa State can run the table, but that loss to TCU kind of hinders them because, the college football playoff loves Ohio State. They absolutely adore the Buckeyes.
Money.
Another person that doesn't adore the Buckeyes, me. I don't like them.
Yeah, me neither.
The Redskins get close to a touchdown. Sorry, we're watching football too. But Oklahoma State is not the media darlings that everybody likes. They can win out and have a fantastic resume. They beat Pitt too. And,
that's trap game.
Pitt's always a tough team, but I think because they'll have that loss to TCU, and for some reason the media just hates TCU. They're not the pedigree of a Oklahoma or a Ohio State. So Big 12's best option. Have your big dog Oklahoma run the table.
Essentially, because people forget, but they have a resume win in Ohio State. And if Ohio State somehow survives the Big Ten East, which is one of the toughest conferences in the nation, and they get an easy Wisconsin win in the Big Ten championship, it's hard to leave Oklahoma out.
Ohio State still has Rutgers.
I think here's one of the biggest problems is
Zach, no. Continue.
we're gonna start getting into the whole debate that has no answer is what's important for this playoff committee.
Yeah.
And we saw it last year. and I know that we're going to get into a point where we're so, the debate, the conversation is so obscure that we get to a point where we're arguing if Oklahoma manages to win out and Ohio State doesn't have another loss, and we're arguing who gets that fourth spot between Oklahoma and Ohio State. Let's say that's a scenario, and people are trying to say, well, the win for Ohio State over Penn State was better than the win for Oklahoma over Ohio State. I guarantee that's a question, and it doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
The conversation has gotten so confused like that. No, I don't think they'll look at it objectively and just say, well, Oklahoma beat Ohio State, so that kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, and also for the people out there with the SEC, like Zach just did, like there is an argument that most of the SEC's down. It's top heavy. Yes, I agree. Alabama, Georgia. But the thing is, you have to do the thing that's not what Miami's doing. Like Georgia and Alabama are killing people. They're just beating up on them. Florida got destroyed and eventually led this afternoon to McElwain getting essentially fired. Mm-hmm. They're just destroying people. It's not like Florida State a few years ago. They're killing people. There's no reason they shouldn't be in the top two. But like with a team like Wisconsin that's undefeated, there's questions that can arise. So you make a good point what the committee will look for. But honestly, like I hate to look down the line, but it's just the SEC will have two teams in there if both Alabama and Georgia get to the SEC title game undefeated. Yeah, like I know there's a lot of SEC haters out there, but you have to admit that they are impressive football teams.
It's the only two good teams they have.
Yeah.
Quick question: how many points will LSU score against Alabama? I don't think they score a single point.
No.
I do not.
I'll give them 10. I'll give them 10.
I will give them at the most 7.
Where is that?
Think
Tuscaloosa?
it is in Tuscaloosa.
Okay.
They will not score against.
I'll give them
Alabama.
10. I'll give them 10.
They won't score a touchdown.
I'll give them 10.
I'll give that.
Yeah, I think they get shut out.
Okay.
I think they get shut out and they get unmasked as a fraud. I think Auburn's turn is coming soon too, but I really think LSU. I don't think they put up a single point. I was gonna say they might get an opportunity for a field goal and it'll get blocked.
They will not. They will not score an offensive.
I really don't think so
against Alabama.
So I've been waiting to say this. Everybody remember when Wazoo was in the top 10? Well, they're number 25 now, and they faced Stanford this weekend in a technical top 25 battle, but it's 18 versus 25.
It's still a chance. It's a three-way dance for the Pac-12 North. Washington State will have to win out because if they beat Stanford, they'll hold that tiebreaker over them. And then they have Washington in, again, a beautiful Apple Cup. I like when the Apple Cup has a lot to play for. Had a lot to play for last year. Still could be the Pac-12 North on the line and Pac-12 South, USC or Arizona. So I like seeing conference championship matchups that are different. I hate seeing Alabama, Florida every single year. Hate seeing, well, it's pretty much been Alabama, Florida, except a 2-year period where for some reason Missouri made it, and then Georgia every other 5 years. But I like seeing different teams.
Kirby Smart.
We saw a few years ago where we had Iowa versus Michigan State. That was refreshing. I like seeing new teams. I hate in the Big Ten championship seeing Ohio State and Wisconsin every single year because it's going to happen again this year. The Pac-12 championship was a huge breath of fresh air, even though it was a blowout. It was Washington versus Colorado. Credit to Colorado. They were the afterthought of the Pac-12, getting invited with Utah. Everyone's like, oh, Utah's a great addition, and they are. They are a valued program in basketball and football. But then you get Colorado, and everyone's like, why the hell did you get Colorado? They made it to the Pac-12 championship. I'm tired of seeing the same teams over and over again. I'm like seeing it. That's why I'm pulling hard for Arizona. I really want to see Arizona, Washington State. That will be a fun Rose Bowl, even though I think the Rose Bowl is a semifinal game this year. It'll be a fun Fiesta.
Rose Bowl and Sugar Bowl.
It will be a fun Fiesta Bowl.
For sure.
I think I don't even know what to make of the Pac-12.
We went over this. They're done.
I can't even say. I don't even know how to make that prediction though, because I'm with you, Chris. They did it last year with Washington, and they did it this year with Washington again and with Washington State. I don't think Washington State was really at any point to be ranked where they were at.
No.
But I mean, coming into this week, I mean, Stanford went into Oregon State, a 1-6, what it was, team, and barely snuck by. Barely at 15-14. I mean,
first time making Oregon State's defense look good.
Right. I mean, it was. I was kind of just shocked at that game, and I get the whole argument. Bryce Love was out.
Yeah.
But I'll come around full tilt on you. I just don't get the same thing with Florida State. You know, you lose your quarterback and all of a sudden you're a 2-5 team.
I can't imagine with a team that gets nothing but 5 and 4 stars how you can't beat Boston College, or even how the defense allows that. Their quarterback was 5 for 20. How do you lose that bad to Boston College?
I mean, I go back to Ohio
going
State
on?
with Cardale Jones. I hate. I won't even get
He
into
plays
it.
school.
But
You don't play school.
Ohio State had to go to their third string quarterback, and
Yeah.
look what they did with
You
it.
look at Florida that goes to their top dog, 5-star recruit Felipe Franks. They suck. They
Drew Kessler, shout out.
Right.
this fun and gun offense that Florida,
Oh my
for some reason, every time Florida, like every offensive coordinator wants to run that dinky shotgun thing that just hasn't been able to work since Tim Tebow, and it just, this is something I can't fathom. They get these 5-star recruits and everything, and they just can't play them. They can't play them at all. LSU the same way. LSU hasn't had a quarterback since Jamarcus Russell. To me, this just doesn't make sense. How you get these top-rated guys. Drew said yesterday, Drew Williams said that the SEC's defenses are the closest thing to pro.
They are.
Defenses.
That's a fact.
That makes a lot of sense. But to me, it just doesn't make sense how these teams get these like 4 and 5-star players, and they just can't do anything with them. How many times do we see Florida get these recruits 5 and 4 different wide receivers that just come in? They don't do anything. I don't get it.
Look, Florida's been in a rut for a few years now. You mentioned Tebow. After that, I don't know what.
It's not McElwain's fault either. Like,
No.
his job was to try and get them out of the rut, and it's been a little better. But at the end of the day, it's like he's an offensive mind and could not find anything.
Right. I mean, you go back. What was it? I want to say it was a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, where Florida was so bad. I mean, ESPN was playing videos of their two offensive linemen blocking each other for weeks. It was almost as bad as the butt fumble. I mean,
Georgia Southern used to be a power FCS program, and they were really good those first 2 years. Now they're winless. It's awful to see.
Yeah.
So you see those switches that'll happen, but
Okay, back on track, everyone. Any games that you guys think are important but actually aren't important before I hit the 7 p.m. slot?
There are a million games that are so important. There are a lot of divisional matchups that actually the winner of this is in firm control of their division to go to the conference championship.
What are those?
Virginia Tech, Miami, Stanford, Washington State, USC, Arizona.
Well, I'm not to Virginia Tech, Miami yet. I said
That's why I
before
didn't
the 7 p.m. slot.
Well, then you asked me, and then I was like, well, I got to go into it.
well, I think a massive game.
Toledo, Northern Illinois.
A massive game deal, and I think it might just be massive for Zach personally. This is a must win. I gotta repeat this again. A must win for all you Terps fans. If the Terps lose to Rutgers, send them back to the ACC. We don't want them anymore in the Big Ten.
Honestly, I thought you were going to say New Mexico State at Texas State, because one loss will bring them to 6, and then therefore my Aggies will have to win out.
And sorry, everyone, Zach has been muted. Okay, we're moving on to TCU against Texas. No, I'm kidding. Go.
Maryland is a power program in every other sport but football. I hate the argument that because you're not good at football that you shouldn't be in this conference. Rutgers is not good at a single thing, but yet Maryland is one of the top programs in basketball and field hockey and soccer and lacrosse. They help the Big Ten. And baseball too.
I won't negate that. Actually, I want to see them perform better.
No, you don't.
In the baseball.
In the baseball. Okay.
The ACC is so good at baseball,
right.
and the Big Ten has been a breath of fresh air. Maryland's actually been decent.
Right. Well, so what I meant was, if that's what I mean, is Rutgers is so bad if they lose to Rutgers. They shouldn't leave well, I personally loved seeing them in the ACC, but it makes it, whatever, money and everything. But I don't think they're bad for the Big Ten. They have dominant sports programs. I'll agree with you there. Football team not having a terrible year, looking at what they've, had to deal with.
It's a new turf.
But they better not lose to Rutgers. That's all I'm saying.
They won't lose to Rutgers.
It's at Rutgers.
You never know, man.
In New Jersey.
I was there for the very first Maryland Rutgers game in the Big Ten, and it was the worst game I've ever been to, and I was so angry.
Okay, let's look at 7:15 time slot. The mighty Texas Longhorns marching into Fort Worth. Texas defeating Iowa State, the mighty Cyclones, at number 14 earlier this season. Can TCU have back-to-back losses on ESPN at 7:15?
It could.
I'm going to go on a limb here. I'm going to say Texas wins. Texas wins.
I'm thinking shootout.
I think TCU. I think people will stop talking about TCU, and I think Texas pulls this win.
7 points against Iowa State. I have no faith in this TCU offense, and they're going to have that on their minds. Their season done, essentially, but even though it's not. And Texas, with Tom Herman, give him credit, he's improved it a bit. Gets it done in Fort Worth on a national stage. He has well-timed wins on national stages. I think he gets it done.
Texas's offense hasn't been there this season. They put up 38 against Baylor. I think my high school team could put up 38 against Baylor at this point in the season.
What is that high school? Give him a shout-out.
Choctaw High School in Southern Maryland. Power program. Pretty good at football. State champions in 2015 in baseball. But enough about that. But take a small... Why does it seem like there is no parity in conferences anymore? It's always one division that's so much better than the rest. But honestly, the American this year, nobody's talking about it. The American is so good this year. You look in the East, and it's essentially South Florida and Central Florida.
I was going to mention Central Florida, Zach's team, number 15 is your Scott Frost.
They kept, he'll be at Nebraska next season when Mike Riley gets fired. But you take a look at the American. The reason they put the divisions together, you think Navy in Annapolis, Maryland is a Western school?
Yes.
You're an idiot. But the reason the American divisions are in the East is the old Big East school.
Literally on the coast.
The old Big East schools, South Florida, Cincinnati, and Connecticut, they wanted to keep them together. That's the only reason, so they can keep them together.
Well, come on. At the core, that's the whole reason of the American is because the Big East broke up. Come on.
I think the American is now the only program where there is no one side better than the other, because on the west side you have Navy, Memphis, Houston, and even SMU. SMU, the Pony Express, they're bowl eligible this year. That's so top heavy. And then you have Tulane and Tulsa. Tulsa used to be good. Not anymore. Tulane is Tulane. Fear the Green Wave. But you look on the east side, it's all Central Florida and South Florida, but they're still good. Connecticut stinks. I'm sorry to say that. Cincinnati's not very good. But the American at least has two good teams on both sides. We never see them. The Mountain West, it's Mountain. It's Boise State, Colorado State, Wyoming, and then San Diego State and Fresno on the other side.
But, Zach, you bring up a good point. Pony Express. You know where UCF is at this week? SMU. You calling the upset this week?
I'm not calling the upset at all. But I will call
fun.
I will call an upset. I think Chad Morris leads SMU in 2 years. And goes
Where's he
to a
going?
new program.
Where's he going?
Maybe if Baylor fires Matt Rule after this year.
Well, Matt Rule, I gotta say.
I'll tell you exactly where he's going. Lovie Smith is on the way out.
Who wants to go to Illinois?
Lovie Smith will be fired.
Who wants to go to Illinois?
Let's talk about coaching.
Brad Underwood somehow decided I'm going to Illinois, and he shouldn't have gone.
Well, I don't want to get off the American just yet, because I was actually going to bring that up right after Zach, because they've got, 2 ranked teams. South Florida just on the cusp of being ranked 25. Should they be there over Wazoo? I don't know. I'm not here to answer that one, but some definitely some good programs in there that are being overlooked. I think UCF is really close to making a lot of people angry with getting into the top 10.
Oh, yeah.
and frustrating some people who think their teams are better, but definitely going to be a shootout and a big opportunity for SMU. For SMU, if they're able to upset UCF, I mean, obviously they're going to have to win out if they want to, overtake Memphis. But
in this day and age where it goes to money and especially ratings, because a few years ago when I think it was Michigan State beat Iowa. They purposely put Michigan State at the 4 spot and have Oklahoma at the 3 spot.
Yeah.
So instead of having Michigan State Clemson, they went with Michigan State Alabama, and they didn't want to put Oklahoma and Alabama together because Oklahoma gives Alabama problems. But in this day of age where they purposely pick these matchups, they purposely pick these matchups on purpose, and there will never be. I will say there will never be a Group of 5 team that makes the college football playoff.
No.
Unless they do this bump it to 8, which
no matter what they do, because they now have the top Group of 5 team makes a New Year's 6 bowl game. UCF's going to do it if they win out and everything, but they will never have it unless these teams play super strong schedules, and they do this like the committee.
SMU not a bad schedule. They play TCU.
Yeah,
they do every year actually because they're in a rivalry, Fort Worth and Dallas, but. The committee's so big on purposely manipulating these matchups for television ratings. They don't say, these are the top 4 teams. They purposely interchange the 3 and 4 spot to make it a better matchup.
Right.
I know they do. It's just for ratings. So.
and the only team, outside of those big five is Notre Dame, which has a contract with the ACC. Like, that has the matchups and the strength of schedule that can do that. And they're only honestly in the discussion because they lost to Georgia and they have a few wins against ACC opponents. They have a big win against NC State, but at the end of the season, is that going to matter? No. Come on, let's be honest.
I think it just depends, what we put the emphasis on again. Is there an emphasis on the championships? Is there an emphasis on the quality wins? We don't know.
Okay, next, I'd like to take a vote here. Do all three of us have Southern Mississippi upsetting Tennessee?
No, Tennessee finally gets one.
It's okay.
You were going to give them a win?
Will UTEP,
I don't know about that.
Will UTEP get their first win at Middle Tennessee State? I'll already say it.
Okay.
Nope.
Minnesota at Michigan. How the mighty have fallen, Chase and Jim Harbaugh.
Man.
Any thoughts?
They'll win 6-3.
I think this is something that was really, I don't want to say underrated, but like it's not talked about. It's not talked about. It's the struggles that Harbaugh's had.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he right off the bat, an explosive personality, leading the team and had some success on the outside. But if you look at it when it comes down to it, he just hasn't, or at least his teams haven't performed, when they needed to. I mean, what was it? I want to say, I don't think he's beat, when it comes to Michigan State, Ohio State, and Penn State, I think he has one win against all three. And he's lost all the other matchups. I think he's on the hot seat big time. I don't think it's something they'll talk about because the recruiting prowess that he's got, but I really don't. It hurts Penn State that they are out, that they are really heading downhill because their win doesn't mean as much. I still think it means something, but doesn't mean as much. I think Minnesota took a step back, weirdly enough, this year because I think last year they were kind of
PJ Fleck's working it out. It's his first season.
They have no quarterback situation there. That's always been. It's really tough to recruit if you're Minnesota against a Wisconsin or even in Nebraska or any Big Ten school. So Connor Rota's their quarterback, and I think they had Mitch Weiner maybe last year, the year before that. Minnesota's defense is good because the Hog Mileys, the big farmers, as Dr. Simmons likes to call them. They just don't have the offense.
Right, but I see Michigan getting back on a roll here. I see them probably taking the next few. Sorry, Zach. I see him beating Minnesota though this upcoming week. And then what I wanted to head back because or actually no, it's in a couple, so I'll let you. Okay,
so my next situation is we have two games we're flipping between CBS and ABC, Alabama and LSU, which LSU squeaked it out to make it a top 20 game. It's in Tuscaloosa, though, we mentioned that. And Virginia Tech at Miami. Mark Richt and the Hurricanes squeaking out some wins. Which game are you watching?
I've only got one opinion on
Which game are you watching, and what are your thoughts on both matchups?
I'm watching a black TV screen is what I'm watching. I'm not watching either of those games, and here's why. I agree exactly with Zach. There's a lot of importance in that Virginia Tech-Miami game, but we, for some reason, glorify these matchups against Virginia Tech. I don't know what it is, but all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they appear back in the top 15, right around when they're playing a team, as in Clemson or, right now, Miami number 9. But it never works out. We saw it last year. Oh my gosh, Virginia Tech, could they be the team?
And frankly,
do it?
Frank Beamer, great head coach. The same thing happened. They would always get up there and then end the season 10-2 with like 2 blowout losses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To those teams where they said, oh, maybe they could do it. So this, I think it's an important game in terms of ACC standings, but I don't see Virginia Tech having a shot. I see Miami stepping up where they haven't been
getting a
able
2-point
to
win,
put
right?
points.
Getting a 2-point win.
I don't think it'll be close.
Okay.
And the reason isn't because of Miami's offense, because of their defense. I don't think Virginia Tech has a shot. I can't stand this LSU-Alabama matchup. I'll let that.
And Alabama rolls. Yeah.
I think that only one of the matchups are watchable. We've learned that LSU-Alabama is never watchable. It's a defensive, sloppy slugfest there where if you get 10 points, you're probably going to win. But Virginia Tech, Miami, you might see a little more offense. I think if this matchup was in Blacksburg, this would be an easy Virginia Tech win. Not easy, but they would pull away from. But I think Miami ekes out another win. I think they're going to be having those discussions. But again, I don't I don't think Miami's going to beat Clemson or whoever comes out of the Atlantic. Or I'm sorry, Clemson. But I don't think Miami beats Clemson. I think.
Well, Miami's like they're the ACC Wisconsin.
They are.
I mean,
Essentially this
Wisconsin hasn't been close in games, but do they have it to beat a big team? No.
But it's like my point with Wisconsin's 24-10 win over Illinois. North Carolina is terrible. They are awful this season, and Miami ekes out a 5-point win. That's it.
Well, they took Brandon Harris as their starting quarterback that worked out for LSU.
Yeah.
I mean, I can say this a million times. If you take Danny Etling from Purdue, who couldn't win the job for the Boilermakers, take him down to LSU, he's a 2-year starter. How does that work? You take Austin Appleby, another Purdue quarterback, started at Florida a year ago. How do these Purdue quarterbacks somehow getting starting jobs in the SEC, where it's apparently the best conference? I just don't understand how the quarterback play is so bad over there that you're taking Purdue quarterbacks to start.
Well, that's the same thing when Georgia brought in Grayson Lambert. It's just like he came in. He started a few games, but just like
Virginia.
He tutored Jacob Eason a little bit, but look, Jake Fromm comes right in. Like, what was the point in all that? And that's another one of those decisions that was like, Kirby Smart had him on the roster, but Mark Richt brought in, and he was left over. But at the same time, it's just, you make a good point, Zach. Like, what's the deal? Like, SEC, you have a better chance just recruiting these quarterbacks straight out of high school if you're not Florida, But
yeah. Well, we learned that, too, the hard way, too. Because when's the last time an SEC quarterback has been good in the NFL? I mean, Matt Stafford, but how many other people can you name besides that?
Yeah. Gosh, well, what, for 1 year? That's the point.
Tim Tebow has a playoff time.
Or just any SEC quarterbacks at all that are good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Cam Newton.
Well, yeah,
Stafford
Cam
and
Newton
are the only two I can name off the top of my head.
And Cam Newton's,
so what game are you watching? What game are you watching then?
At 8 o'clock.
I would rather watch Tech, Virginia, or Virginia Tech, Miami.
Okay.
Tech, Virginia.
Okay. So let's go to the Oregon Ducks. They've gotten... They are a football team. They've improved to being a football team. Do they destroy the Pac-12 even more than they are right now by defeating Washington?
It's in Washington. I don't think so.
Okay.
I'd love to see it.
10 o'clock FS1.
Washington has the best defense in the Pac-12, but I like how Royce Freeman is a senior at Oregon. When he was a freshman, he was like one of the top running backs in the country, and all of a sudden, since Oregon hasn't been good, everybody forgets about him. He's still good. He's got 1,000 yards in the season, but it's pretty much the only Oregon offense. They miss Marcus Mariota. We see this a lot where teams will get these top quarterbacks and then they lose them and they can't replace them. We saw that. One of the only times I can think that didn't happen was when Texas lost Vince Young and then went straight to Colt McCoy. But then we see after Colt McCoy, Texas still hasn't recovered. And then we see Oregon, they haven't recovered. And then maybe since Jameis Winston, Florida State, they haven't been very good since.
I think we saw a really interesting tactic when Oregon kind of burst onto the scene with Mariota.
Yeah.
We saw kind of the usage of some of those like speedy receivers that maybe not necessarily were born football players. It was almost as if they just went to the latest track events and said, give me your best sprinters. We're going to put them on the line as the best wide receivers. So, but look at the Ducks. Look at their performances that they've had this year against Washington State. They put up 10 and lost. Against Stanford, put up 7 and lost. Against UCLA, only put up 14 and lost. And all those losses, 33-10, 49-7, and 31-14.
Puts up 77 on Southern Utah.
Oh, come on. Okay.
Put up 42 on Nebraska as well.
Okay.
That's not hard anymore.
Pac-12 at night slot. I know Zach's going to be watching ESPN. Zach's going to be watching ESPNU, San Diego State, San Jose State. But meanwhile, on ESPN, Arizona at USC, Rich Rod fans here in the house.
Back to last year when San Diego State was all of a sudden the talk of the town.
We got to start wrapping up, so just give me a pick in that.
I think USC comes away with the win, but Khalil Tate, the sophomore quarterback, almost a Lamar Jackson-esque quarterback where he can throw the ball, but he's better on the ground.
Yeah.
I think USC has the pedigree. It's at home. They're going to win.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I want Arizona to win. I think it'll make the Pac-12 really fun, really interesting, especially moving forward. It would put them at the top of the South, and then the North is kind of just a mess right now. But yeah, I don't
US
I think
because
USC's got
honestly, USC's done. They have 2 loss. You can't like people say, "Oh, 2-loss conference champion get in the playoff." It's not happening. It's not happening. So.
And USC doesn't look at all what they looked like last year, so they aren't going to get on a run.
Darnold may stay in USC for his junior year now too.
I can
I
see
know.
it.
I could see it.
I can see Barkley staying for his senior year.
Nope.
No, he's gone. He's gonna win the Heisman then leave.
Well, it depends. If the Giants end up losing out, he'll probably stay because who wants to go to the Giants?
Hey, then I'm sure the Giants would gladly do that because they kind of need a running back. Zach's happy because Dallas missed a field goal. It's 10-7 Redskins. With that, we'll sign off. Any final takes anybody wants to give?
It's surprisingly, we saw a couple weeks into the season, not a lot of great matchups, but slowly as we're getting down to the more meaningful parts of the season, with the college football playoff coming out, it's going to be an interesting few weeks, especially there's a ton of matchups this week and a lot of good ones, minus LSU, Alabama, that's not a good one. But there's a ton of good matchups this week, and it's going to be interesting to see how the playoff rankings unfold on Tuesday and then how much of an impact that has on this Saturday.
And shout out to the TV networks. They're actually spreading out the games this week, unlike last week when everything was at 3:30. I'm trying to watch Georgia whoop on Florida, but then there's 7 other games I want to check out at the same time.
Well, I'm excited for Tuesday. I want the rankings to come out. I want to see where everyone's at because I think we learned last year that AP really doesn't say much. I mean, I think AP, this is, of course, I'm biased, but this was my only example, was I think AP had Penn State at 24, 25-ish, and then CFP came out and they were 12.
Yeah.
So, you never know. I think we will see some of these question mark teams that we talked about today well out of the discussion, and I think we'll see a really interesting top 8 come Tuesday.
We've broken 45 minutes on this podcast, so final thing I wanted to get Chase's thoughts. Penn State drops to 7 after a 1-point loss to Ohio State. What are your thoughts on that and the media bias in that? Like, come on, every team gets dropped at least 5 spots after a loss. I think it's ridiculous. It's a 1-point loss to Ohio State. Come on.
I think I'm kind of torn on it. There's just so much to look at when it comes to losses. But if I look at it that way, I agree. It is a 1-point loss.
At Ohio State, too.
At Ohio State, in the shoe.
Yeah.
And you look at TCU, who lost at Iowa State. I'm not trying to take anything away from Ames, but, a 14-7 loss at Iowa State, and they only go down 6. I'm torn because I understand the argument of, you lose that game, you kind of blow that game. It was a mix of, I wouldn't really say they did anything to blow it, but I think Ohio State just came storming back. JT Barrett did an incredible job and they couldn't stop it. So I get the argument that without that Ohio State win, they, what else do they have? Because Michigan now apparently is horrific. But like I said, I understand it for AP, but I could see them in the top 6 still.
Okay.
The only problem is you have that bunch up of 1-loss teams. However, we're going to get into the argument of what's a good loss. And if I'm comparing losses, I would rather lose at Ohio State by 1 than, let's go through, I think Notre Dame has a really good loss, obviously, you would agree. But I'd rather lose those games than lose by 3 to Syracuse.
Yeah.
I mean, and then a loss to Iowa State if I'm Oklahoma, and I get that situation is really muddy because Oklahoma beat Ohio State, but I think that's the best loss in the country right now.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree with that. And thank you everyone for sticking out with us out there. That was a lot of fun. We'll do that again for sure in the next few weeks. But
shoot us your responses.
Yeah, for the flyer.
All 6 of you.
Yeah, really. All 6 of you plus Tim Brennan, SID of Salisbury. Either tweet at us at SU Flyer on Twitter or Salisbury Flyer on Instagram and the Flyer on Facebook. Let us know what your thoughts. Thank you to sports reporter Zach Gilleland and news editor Chase Gorski for tuning in for this one, giving their thoughts on crazy college football season. Always fun, too. I'm sports editor Chris Mackowiak, and keep reading on the flyer and watch out for a podcast. Thanks for listening. Have a great afternoon. Redskins up 10-7 as Zach gives a fist bump in the air.